Hello again, friends. In today's tutorial, I'm going to make this sample of the Textured Comfort Crochet Throw. This throw has several different stitches, all beautifully textured. This one section I'm calling a modified half double crochet V-stitch because I make it just a little bit differently than the traditional way. It includes mistake stitch. It includes the mini bean stitch, which is also called Elizabeth stitch. And then the edge of my border, I make what is called a zigzag slip stitch. So I'll show you how to do all of those things and get this whole thing together in this tutorial. If you would like to purchase the full written pattern, I'm going to put links in the description. You can find it 3 different places: in my Etsy shop, in my Ravelry shop, and on my new website. So again, I'll post links for those in the description. Let's get started. This pattern calls for a size I or 5.5 millimeter crochet hook and some 4-weight, medium weight, worsted weight yarn. So just go pick out some that you like. And to begin, you need to chain any even number of chains, just however wide you want it, and then add 1 more chain to that. So for this sample, I chained 20 and then added 1 more for a total of 21. And row 1 is very easy. You're just going to start with a row of single crochets. So beginning in the second chain from the hook, remember this doesn't count as anything. Here's your first chain, here's your second chain, and I prefer to flip mine over and crochet in this back bump. I just like the edge that creates. If you don't want to do that though, you do not have to. So I'm just going to start working single crochets in every single stitch across the row. I'm assuming you probably already know how to do that, and if for whatever reason you don't, I have a tutorial on how to do that. You can go scroll back and find those beginning tutorials that I made for my friends and family that wanted to learn how to crochet. So I will finish out this row and I'll come back when I get to the end because I don't think you need to watch me single crochet. All right, I'll meet you back. So I finished all of my single crochets on row 1, and to begin row 2, I'm going to chain up 2 and turn. And this row is going to be a row of what I'm calling modified half double crochet V-stitch. And I'm calling it modified because it's made a little differently than the traditional way I've seen it made. So to begin, we're going to skip this first stitch. This turning chain is going to count as the first stitch. And then we're going to work a half double crochet into the second stitch and another half double crochet in that same stitch. So 2 half double crochets worked in that second stitch. Then skip a stitch and we're going to do the same thing. 2 half double crochets worked in the same stitch. Skip a stitch, 2 half double crochets worked in the same stitch. Skip a stitch, 2 half double crochets worked in the same stitch. So I'm going to continue doing this all the way across the row and I'll meet you back at the end. I'm at the end of row 2 and I have 2 stitches left. I'm going to skip this stitch right here and in this final stitch work 1 half double crochet to finish out the row. To begin row 3, chain up 2 and turn your work. This turning chain counts as the first stitch. And then I'm going to start making V's inside of the V's that we have already made. The reason I'm calling this a modified half double crochet V-stitch is because all of the patterns that I have seen typically have a chain in between these 2 half double crochets, and I wanted my V's to look a little more compact than that, so I just eliminated that chain. All right, so what we're going to do is work 2 half double crochets right in the middle of this V. So here's 1 and here's 2. Then go to the next V, right in the middle of that V, work 2 half double crochets. Go to your next V, we're doing the same thing. And if you're having a little trouble seeing it, you can kind of pull that apart, but I don't think it's terribly difficult to see, to be honest. So I don't think that that will be problematic for you. One more. Basically, all we're doing is stacking V's right on top of V's. So go to your next V, we're working our stitches right here. 1 half double crochet, a second half double crochet, and we're doing this all the way across the row. So when I get to the end, I'll meet you back and we'll finish out that row together. I'm at the end of row 3 now, and I just made the final little V right in the middle of the V from the row below. And the last stitch will be a half double crochet worked in the top of that turning chain. Row 4, chain up 2, turn your work, and you're going to do the exact same thing you did on row 3. So find that V, here it is, and you're going to work 2 half double crochets right in the middle of the V. Find your next V, it's right here, right in the middle of that V, work 2 half double crochets. Find the next V, it's right here, split that sucker right down the middle with 2 half double crochets. And so on and so forth. You're just going to do this exact same thing for the entirety of the row. I'm not going to make you watch me do that because you've already seen me do it. So what I'm going to do is work a few more rows, and then I'll show you how to do the next section. Okay, so I ended up working 5 rows of the half double crochet V-stitch, and I'm at the end of this 5th row, and notice that I put, before I started this last row, I put a stitch marker in the turning chain. That is because we're going to finish out this row and then we're going to work a row of single crochet, but this turning chain is so easy to miss, and this does count as a stitch, so you need to put a stitch in the top of that turning chain. But if this isn't here, it blends in really easily, and it's just so easy to forget, and then your stitch count is off, and then if you don't catch that in time, you're ripping out a ton of stitches and rows, and it's just a huge pain. So I always put a stitch marker in that turning chain right before my last row of half double crochet V stitches, so that when I'm working back on my next row, I remember that that is there and I need to work into it. So do with that info what you will. All right, so here is the last half double crochet V. And then I'm going to work a half double crochet into the top of this turning chain. And then that will finish out this section for the sample of the half double crochet V-stitch. Okay, so chain 1, turn your work, and as I just said, we're going to do a row of single crochets beginning in the first stitch and going all the way across the row. So I will get these worked, and when I get to the end, I won't quite finish it, so I can show you what I mean about this blending in and being difficult to see. So I'll work on this and I'll be right back. All right, I've almost finished out this row of single crochet. I have this final V that I need to work into the top of. So this, and then I'll work into this turning chain. So top of the V, top of the V, and then I'll take out this stitch marker. See how it's so easy to forget that because that's so close to the edge. That's why I always put a stitch marker in that turning chain, because I cannot tell you how many rows I've had to rip out if I don't do that, just because I forget about it. All right, so let's get this last single crochet worked. I also do a stitch count on this row just to make sure that everything is what it is supposed to be. So at the beginning of the project, I told you every row should have 20 stitches. So let's make sure that's what we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Perfect. Okay, so we're good. Incidentally, when I'm counting stitches on a really large project, I usually just count by tens. And so like for this little sample, it's 20, so it's an even number of 10. So I would just count 2 sets of 10, and if everything lines up and that's what I come up with, and I know I'm good to go. If you're doing, say, like 124 stitches or 56 stitches or however wide your project is, you could just count, like in the case of 56, you would have 5 sets of 10, and then that last little section, you would have 6 stitches. So if you're ending on 6 stitches, then you know you're good to go. I feel like it's so much faster to do that than to count each individual stitch. Maybe it's not for you, but it is for me. And so that is just one of my little hacks that I use to count as quickly as possible. All right, onward. Next row, we're going to do another row of single crochet, easy peasy. Chain up 1 and single crochet all the way across the row. I'm not going to make you watch me do this, so I'll meet you back when I get to the end. Okay, I'm at the end. I have 1 single crochet left to work. Then chain 1 and turn, and we're going to begin working the mistake stitch. This is super duper easy. Beginning in this first stitch, work a half double crochet, and then in the next stitch, work a slip stitch, half double crochet in the next stitch, slip stitch in the next stitch, and we're just going to keep doing this all the way across the row, alternating between half double crochets and slip stitches. And you should end the row with a slip stitch. So I'll just keep working these, and when I get to the end of the row, I'll meet you back. I just worked that final slip stitch, so now I'm going to chain up 1 and turn and begin the next row. And it's worked in almost exactly the same way, with one difference. Rather than working our stitches into the front of the stitches like normal, we're going to work in the back loops only. So that means rather than inserting our hooks here and here and here, we're going to insert our hooks right in the middle of the V's. When you flip your work over and you're looking at the top of your work, you're going right here. This is where you're going to insert the hook to make the stitches. This is the back loop. This is the front loop. This is the back loop. And in the case of a half double crochet, this is called the third loop. So we're working right here. Otherwise, doing exactly the same thing that we just did on the previous row. So half double crochet in this first stitch, but it's a back loop only half double crochet. So I'm going to insert my hook right here. Then I'm going to work a slip stitch in the back loop only. So right here. Then half double crochet into the back loop only of this slip stitch. And then work a slip stitch in the back loop only of this half double crochet, and so on and so forth. So half double crochets should always be worked into slip stitches, and slip stitches should always be worked into half double crochets. And again, you're doing back loop only. If you don't do work your stitches in the back loop only, you end up with crunch stitch, which is also a very, very pretty stitch. I've done I've done an entire blanket in crunch stitch several years ago, and I've incorporated that stitch in some sampler blankets that I've done, and it's just a very, very pretty stitch as well. But when you do crunch stitch, but working it in the back loop only, you end up with mistake stitch. I am just going to finish out this row because I'm almost to the end, and then we'll go to the next one. Now again, you should be ending with a slip stitch. You're always beginning with a half double crochet and ending with a slip stitch. Then to begin the next row, just chain up one, turn your work, and rinse and repeat. You're going to do the exact same thing. Half double crochet in the back loop only of that first slip stitch, and then work a slip stitch in the back loop only of that next half double crochet all the way down the row. So I'll get this row worked and I will meet you back. I'm on this very last slip stitch. In order to work it, you'll need to flip this half double crochet over because it tends to curl over on itself a bit. So to find that back loop, just flip it over and then work that slip stitch, then chain one and turn, and we'll begin our next row. Now for this sample, I'm going to say we're done with mistake stitch and move on to finish out this little final mini section that we're going to have in between our sections of half double crochet, V-stitch, and mini bean. So to do that, we're going to work a row of single crochet in the back loop only, and then a row of regular single crochet. Now the reason I'm doing single crochet in the back loop only is because it will push these stitches forward so that it continues to look like mistake stitch. If I don't do that and I work into the fronts of these stitches, it looks like crunch stitch, and I don't want that for this pattern. So again, you're going to flip your work over and you're going to work right in the middle of this top V rather than going into the front. So single crochet beginning in the first stitch, single crochet in the back loop only, and we're going to do this all the way across the row. Let me do a few of these and then I'll show you, I'll do them in the front rather than the back loop only, and I'll show you the difference. Okay, I'm going to start working in the fronts of the stitches now so that you can compare and see why I chose to do back loop only on this one row. Okay, can you see the difference? It's not super obvious with just a few stitches, but hopefully you can see it. This just has a lot more texture and is pushed out a lot more than these stitches over here. So these stitches are crunch stitch. These are mistake stitch since I'm working in the back loop only. So I don't know if you can really see the difference there, but as you go along, it definitely becomes more pronounced. So anyway, that's why I chose to do back loop only with this row of single crochet, because it still mimics this mistake stitch section. My goodness. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to continue working these single crochets in the back loop only. And when I'm finished, I will, I'll meet you back. Okay, I'm on my final single crochet in the back loop only. Again, you'll need to flip this half double crochet over so that you can see that loop because it tends to curl over on itself. So single crochet in the back loop only. You're finished with that row. Now chain up one, turn your work, and we're going to do an easy peasy row of single crochet beginning in the first stitch and in every single stitch across the row. So I will get this worked and I will meet you back in just a minute. Okay, I have one single crochet left to work, and this section, this little mini section that is going to separate our sections of half double crochet V-stitch and mini bean or Elizabeth stitch is complete for this sample. The section in the actual pattern is bigger than this. So for the mini bean section or Elizabeth stitch section, we need to chain up 2 and turn our work. We're going to skip this first stitch and go to the second stitch. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook right back into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. So you should have 4 loops on your hook now. Yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, and then chain 1, and that chain 1 secures that little mini bean. This is your mini bean. Skip the next stitch, go to the next stitch, and we're going to do the same thing. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. Yarn over, insert your hook right back into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. You'll have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, and then chain 1 to secure that little mini bean. Skip the next stitch, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook back into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops on your hook, and chain 1. And we're going to continue doing this all the way across the row, and you will end with a mini bean. I'll meet you back whenever I'm making that last mini bean. Okay, I'm going to finish this row out. I've reached the end of the row and I have 2 stitches left. I'm going to skip this stitch right here, and in the last stitch work 1 more mini bean. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook right back into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. You should have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, and then chain 1 to secure that mini bean. Now we're going to chain 1 more, and so at the end of this row you'll actually have 2 chains for your turning chain. This first one is part of the mini bean, and then the turning chain part of the turning chain. So just take note of that you will have 2 chains at the end of your row of mini beans. Okay, so to begin this next row, we're going to keep working mini beans, and we're going to work those mini beans into the sides of the mini beans from the row below. So right here, this kind of vertical gap that is in the side of that mini bean, not these chain spaces. Okay, right here, right here, right here, and so on. So insert your hook into that side space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook right back into the same side space, yarn over, pull up a loop. You should have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, and then chain 1 to secure the mini bean. Find your next side space, it's right here. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook right back into the same side space, yarn over, pull up a loop. You should have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops, and then chain 1. Here's your next side space, same thing. Chain 1 to secure it. Find your next side space, it's right there. Whoops, not a single crochet. We want a mini bean there. Chain 1. Here's your next side space. Work your mini bean. Chain 1, and so on and so forth. So I'll finish out this row and meet you back. So I went ahead and worked a few more rows of mini bean just so that would be done. Note that I put a stitch marker in the turning chain right before I finished this row that I'm on right now, this last row, because again, like with this section of half double crochet V-stitch, that comes in handy as we're going to be working this next row of single crochet as a reminder that we need to work into this stitch or into that turning chain, because it's very easily hidden, it's very easily forgotten about. And if you don't work a stitch in that turning chain, then your stitch count will get off and you will want to say all kinds of bad words when you find that out several rows later. So anyway, let's work this last mini bean. We're working into this side space. Chain one to secure the mini bean, then chain another one and turn. And this row is going to be a really easy row of single crochet. So beginning in the top of that, or the side space of that mini bean, and also in each chain space, we're going to work a single crochet. And I'll just see if I can get across this quickly without having to stop this time. Okay, so here's the last side space. And then I'm going to take this stitch marker out and we're going to work our last stitch in the top of the turning chain. And then, let me make sure I'm getting that in the right spot. Then I like to do a stitch count at the end of this row, again, to make sure that everything is correct and I haven't accidentally omitted a stitch or added an extra somewhere. So let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Right on the money. All right, chain one, turn, and another easy row of single crochet. I'm not going to make you do this because there aren't any weird things about this row. So I'm just going to do this entire row of single crochet and I'll meet you back when I'm done. Okay, so I just finished this row of single crochet and now I'm going to work another mini section of this mistake stitch. So to do that, chain up one, turn your work, begin by working a half double crochet in that first stitch, and then a slip stitch in the next stitch, followed by a half double crochet in the next stitch, and another slip stitch in the next stitch. And we're working this section just like we worked the mistake stitch down here. So I'm going to work this entire section, and when I'm finished with it, I'll meet you back. Okay, so I just finished all of my mistake stitch rows, and now I have chained up one and turned, and I'm going to start single crocheting in the back loop only for this entire row, just like we did down here in this section. And when I finish this row of single crochet in the back loop only, I'm going to chain up one and then follow that up with a row of regular single crochet. So let me get these two rows worked up and then I'll meet you back at the end. All right, I just finished up these two rows, the single crochet in the back loop only, and then the row of single crochet, just regular single crochet. So now it's time to begin another section, and we're gonna go back to the beginning, essentially, by working another section of the half double crochet V-stitch. So to do that, chain up two, turn your work. This turning chain counts as the first stitch, so we're gonna skip this stitch and begin working in the second stitch with two half double crochets worked in the same stitch. Skip a stitch, then do the same thing, two half double crochets worked in the same stitch. Skip a stitch, then two half double crochets worked in the same stitch. And I'm just going to continue with this down the entire row. I am not going to record anymore as far as this section goes because I'm doing the exact same thing that I did down here. So if you need to go back and re-watch some of this, if you get stuck, then you can do that. But I'm going to work 5 rows of the half double crochet V-stitch, and then I'll meet you back. Okay, I've come to the very last stitch on this last row of V-stitch. Notice before I started the row, I did put a stitch marker in the turning chain because this is going to come in handy as I'm working the next row as a reminder that I need to work into the top of that turning chain because this does count as a stitch. All right, so let's get this final half double crochet worked in the top of that turning chain. And to finish off the blanket, I chained up one and just did a row of single crochet. So I'm going to single crochet beginning in the first stitch and in every stitch across the row. So I'll get this knocked out, and then when I get to the end, we'll start on the border. Okay, so I have 3 more stitches at the end of this row. Let's get those worked. The last stitch is worked in the top of the turning chain because that turning chain counts as a stitch. And again, look at how close that lies to the edge and just how easy it is to miss. I know I keep saying that, but my goodness, if your stitch count gets off, that is such a huge pain. All right, let's do a quick stitch count and make sure that we're still okay. Remember, we should have 20 stitches for this sample. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Awesome. All right, so now let's start the border. Okay, so let's get busy on this border. The border is really simple. I just did a few rounds of single crochet and then I did a final round of zigzag slip stitch. So to do that, chain up 1, turn your work, and beginning in this first stitch, work a single crochet, and you're going to work a single crochet in every stitch around the entire blanket. When you get to a corner, you'll put 3 single crochets all in the same corner stitch. That way you're able to round that corner nicely. As you're working up and down the sides, just use your best judgment and place those single crochets as evenly as possible. So I will continue to single crochet this first round, and when I get back to the beginning, I will meet you back. I'm back to the beginning of the round. So to finish out this round, I'm going to work 2 single crochets in this last stitch. Now this stitch is a corner stitch, but the reason I'm not working 3 stitches into the same stitch is because the first stitch of the round is also worked into this stitch. So that counts as our 3rd stitch for the corner. So let's get these 2 single crochets worked. And that completes our round. And I'm going to put a stitch marker in this stitch as a reminder that it's the last stitch of the round, but also as a reminder on this next round that I'll be working that this is the new corner stitch, and that I'll need to work three single crochets into that stitch. Now on subsequent rounds, that will no longer be the case as far as this being the corner stitch, but on the second round, it is. Okay, so to begin round 2, we aren't going to chain up, we're not going to turn, we're not going to do anything. We're going to start working immediately into the first stitch of the previous round. So super easy. Work a single crochet into the first stitch and every single stitch around the blanket. When you get to a corner, it's the same thing that we did before. You're going to work 3 single crochets into each corner space or each corner stitch so that you're able to round that corner nicely. It should be a whole lot easier working along the sides this time because you have definite stitches to work into. There's not going to be any guesswork involved. So I will get all of these single crochets worked for round 2, and when I'm back to the beginning, I'll meet you back. I'm at the tail end of round 2. I've reached the point where I'm bumping into the stitch marker now. So I'm going to take that out. This, remember, reminded us that this was the last stitch of the previous round, but also on this round, this is the new corner stitch. So to finish out round 2, I need to work 3 stitches into the same stitch so that I'm rounding that corner. Then I'm going to put the stitch marker on the new last stitch. This new last stitch, however, is not the corner stitch anymore. The corner stitch, the new corner stitch, is the stitch right before that. So just take note, this is only the last stitch and the corner stitch on round 2. Okay, I'm going to work one more round of single crochet on this sample, and then I'll show you how to do a slip stitch or a zigzag slip stitch for the final round. Again, on the written pattern, I do several more rounds of single crochet before I do that final round of zigzag slip stitch. But for sample's sake, one more round will suffice. So let me get that worked, and I'll meet you back when I'm back to the beginning of the round. We're going to start in this first stitch and work all the way around just like we have on the previous 2 rounds. Okay, I'll meet you back. I've reached the last couple of stitches now on round 3. This is the corner stitch, so I'm going to work 3 single crochets into that stitch. And then remove my stitch marker and work the final stitch of this round. And then replace that. So I know that is the last stitch on the next round. And now we're going to begin doing a zigzag slip stitch to finish this sample off. And this is a super easy stitch, and it creates such a pretty effect. Beginning in this first stitch, work a slip stitch, and then just follow that up with a chain. And that's all there is to it. Then go to your next stitch and do the same thing. Slip stitch, and then chain 1. Go to the next stitch and slip stitch, chain 1. And you're going to continue doing this all the way around the blanket. When you get to a corner, though, normally we work 3 stitches. In this case, just work 1. 1 zigzag slip stitch suffices for the corners in this case. So I am going to continue working this zigzag slip stitch all the way around the blanket. And when I finish, I'll meet you back. But look at that. Isn't that pretty? Pretty little texture. Okay, I'll continue working and I'll see you in just a minute. All right, I'm down to the last few stitches of this round, so let me get those worked. This is the corner, but I'm only working 1 stitch in this corner rather than 3 like we usually do. Let me take this stitch marker out and we'll work this final stitch. And there you go. Now all that's left to do is cut this yarn, pull the tail through the chain that you just made. I'm not going to do that because I'm actually going to reuse this yarn. And then weave in that end and any other ends that you have, and that will lie nice and flat against the edge of your work, and you won't even notice it, or it'll be barely noticeable. So there you have it. The little sample for the Textured Comfort Crochet Throw. Hopefully you've learned some new stitches, and if you bought that pattern and just needed a little extra help, hopefully you've gotten some clarification with some things. And again, if you would like the full written pattern, I'm going to link the full written pattern down in the comments. You can find it in 3 different places. You can find it in my Etsy shop, you can find it in my Ravelry shop, or on my new website. So grab yourself one there if you're so inclined. And I'll sign off for now. You guys have a great, great rest of your day. See you later.